I would never want anyone to feel that they're being forced or coerced into having a musical experience, because actually music is so tied into who we are as people that, you know, we don't like things being done to us. So why would we like music being played to us if we're not happy or feeling receptive to it? And so there's an emotional component to it, and an autonomy, self-agency, control element to it. But there's also a dementia element to it, which is that, and we've talked about this in previous sessions, that a relationship with music isn't a static thing. It's really dynamic. It changes over time. You know, the music that you love today might be the music you love in 10 years, but it might not be. But equally, that's the same with dementia. How your dementia is today might not be how it is tomorrow, or in 2 weeks' time, or even a month's time. So it's really important to be mindful of that.
Thank you everyone for joining us for this last Facebook Live Music Mondays with Grace Meadows, the last in a series that we've been doing, but it won't be the last that we see of Grace. I'm sure we will be inviting her back to do lots of new things. If this is your first session of the Music Mondays with us, then all of the other sessions that we've done have been recorded, and you can catch up with them on our YouTube channel and on Facebook. So my name is Sue Hinds, and I'm one of the practitioners at Dementia Carers Count, and I'm delighted to be joined again by Grace, who is going to be doing this session with us again. But also we're really privileged tonight to have Terry with us. And I'm going to hand over to Terry to introduce himself, because he's going to be a fantastic guest, and I know that everybody's really going to want to hear as much as they can from Terry. Terry.
Okay. Right, well, as I say, my name's Terry. I live in what is normally sunny Somerset. I've been a carer, full-time 24/7 carer for my wife for the last 20 years, who developed early onset dementia when she was 52. And obviously it's tried and tested what I do. I carry on doing the caring role, which is getting harder, unfortunately, but it's there. And I've been an ambassador for Dementia Carers Count for, I don't know how many years now, but from one of the very first live sessions that we had at the hotel, which I thoroughly enjoyed and learned so much from.
Thank you, Terry. Yes, one of our first people that came and did our 3-day courses with us. And as you say, Maureen has young onset dementia. And you've been caring for some time, and I think those words you use really resonate with your caring and what you've experienced, and also what we know about music from what we've learned from Grace, which is test it, try it, and keep testing and keep trying things as well. So we'll hopefully touch on that as far as music's concerned tonight. As usual, if anyone's got any questions or comments, please put them in the chat box for us. We'll try and get to them during the session. And if we don't, Terry, Grace, myself, another member of the team will come back to you. But we'll try and weave them into the conversation that we have this evening as much as possible. So, Grace, as I said, this is the last of the Music Mondays series. Can you just do a recap? A really quick recap.
Really quick recap. But I just have to say it's such a privilege to have Terry with us, especially because he's got such a wealth of experience of caring. But I also know he loves music, and I know from him that Maureen also really loves music. So I think that will massively enhance tonight's conversation. So I can't believe we're at week 5. I don't know how we've got there so quickly, but we have covered so much. So we've talked about music and the brain and what's going on when we experience music, whether we're listening to it or whether we're making music with other people or we're experiencing music therapy. So we've really covered the whole rainbow, if you like, of what music and the brain can do. Then we had in week 2 a wonderful session with Jemima, clinical psychologist, who I know is a really dear friend of Dementia Carers Count. And we talked very much about emotion and the psychological impact of dementia, but also how that can be expressed and experienced through music, and how music's such a valuable tool for self-expression and communication. Then we had a lovely session, Sue, you and I, talking about our life, the musical, and what it means to have music as the soundtrack to our lives, and and how we can draw upon that, especially in that caring capacity. And then last week we were joined by the amazing Lucy and Paul from the Good Company people, talking about what it means to share music as a group and why that really, really matters, and the way in which you can do it in such a everyday manner. So we weren't talking about necessarily going to a formalized choir or a music therapy group session, which are absolutely things that you can do, but they were talking very much about how you weave that group music experience into the everyday experiences. So I love the idea of fish and chips in the pub and a great sing-along. So I'm still determined to do that. And then, of course, tonight we're here talking about lots of questions that have come up over those 4 or 5 weeks, and anything else anyone wants to share this evening.
Fantastic, Grace. And I think one of the big important reasons for having Terry here is Terry's experiences encompasses all of that. I think, Terry, doesn't it? Is the how it can make the connections, communication, how it can help with emotions, how you see the brain wiring benefit from using music, through to using it in a quite structured manner and sort of in group situations, and also in an everyday manner on a one-to-one personal basis, and making it very personalized. And it just links me, and I'm going to come to Grace first and then to you, Terry. And I know, Terry, you're going to have plenty to tell us about this, but there's a question that's been come in that said that this person has heard that dementia-friendly concerts can be really beneficial, but that her husband doesn't always react very well to crowds. They've seen many shows over the years, and they think he would still love to see live performances, but it's the pre-show and the post-show people, the traffic and the hustle and bustle that concerns this carer. So Terry, I'm going to come to you in a moment, but Grace, I know you've been involved in lots of concerts as a musician, so anything from you on this one?
So my experience of this is that it's really good to talk to the concert organisers if you can beforehand, because actually they're becoming much more empathetic about how they can support people to get to venues and depart from venues. It might be that they're able to invite you to the venue slightly earlier and have you in a space where you can have a cup of tea and a biscuit, say, and they can let you leave the venue earlier or later, depending on what works for you. But I think I've certainly experienced it in the last couple of months where I've made a call to a venue and they've been really, really accommodating. They've said, what do you need? And I think there's something about saying that we really want to be here. We really want to be part of this amazing performance, but we just need a bit of help. Can you help me? This is what we struggle with. Can you help? And I think there's no shame in asking that question. Can you help me? And it could be anything from sitting in a particular space in the venue. And Terry, I'm sure you've got lots of thoughts on this too. Actually, is it useful to wear some kind of ear defenders or earplugs because actually the volume might be too loud? Or, is it having a program in a different format? I think venues are really switching on to the importance of making performances and access to their spaces much more accessible. So I would say have that conversation like you'd have that conversation with anybody else that you're accessing a service from. Have that conversation with the venue. And also what you'll probably find is if they're not yet quite there with being very dementia friendly, they would love your feedback, which they can learn from. So don't ever feel that you can't say that kind of nearly worked, but actually doing this might have worked a bit better. But Terry, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, basically all theatres now seem to have their own, what they call an access friendly situation where some have separate areas which for disability or which dementia as well. My local theatre here has a particular area which you can book seats and you can go to. I always tell people about the Access Nimbus card, which helps to give access to theatres and it's at a discounted rate. It's to allow eccentric carers basically, so they get a free seat. Not all theatres have got a separate area, but they do have access seats. What I tend to do is try and find out, first of all, what time the actual auditorium opens. And that's usually about half an hour before the show and probably about half an hour after the main doors open. But by doing that, I can find out and I can literally walk in and go straight through to the seat. So you're not hanging about in a crowd. I always make sure that Bishop Maureen's got her lanyard on to identify her, because especially if she goes to the loo, she gets lost. That's my biggest worry all the time. And obviously leaving the theatre, you'll find that within 10 minutes of finishing, most people have left the auditorium. So if you can sit there for 5 minutes longer, you do yourself a favour. But as you've said, Grace, most theatres these days are looking at ways to actually help all disabilities, and dementia is one of the main ones.
And you said something really important there, Terry, about signage. And I know that so many spaces are trying desperately hard with the best of intention to create signage, but actually it's not very helpful signage. So if you're there, like you say, Terry, somebody's getting disorientated and a bit confused about where they are, tell them, because actually it will make somebody else's experience better. And that's what I've found when I've been talking to venues, that often they don't quite know what to do because nobody's telling them, and as much as they might seek out the information, they need to hear it firsthand from people who are actually using the spaces to say, you know what, that little figure that you've got on the door, we can't make out whether it's a man or a woman or a child or whatever, and so could you make it bigger, or could you put a word that means something to somebody? So I think it's really important to give feedback when you're having these experiences.
Yeah, so I find with Maureen, usually if it's a new venue, the first thing I do is find out where the loos are and make sure I'm trying to go with her and stand outside most of the time.
Yeah.
But if it's one that we've been to a lot of times, she can usually find it, but it's when she comes out. She can't remember where we are. Can't remember the seats, can't remember how to get there. She'll go upstairs or downstairs or whatever, that is always the worry, that she's forgotten where we actually stand.
Do you know, Terry, I don't know if you've experienced this recently, but I did it in the last couple of months, that they gave a steward to us. So the steward was appointed to us when we were in the theatre, and they came in and checked on us in the break. They said, do you need to go to the toilet? Can we escort you to the toilet and we'll wait for you outside, and then we'll take you back to your seats? And it's something I hadn't ever experienced before. And I thought, but what a lovely personalised offer in that kind of setting, to know that somebody's there for you.
Yeah,
I think so. And I think, sorry to intrude, I think it is happening more. And I think it's something that, Grace, you were saying, that if Terry can give the feedback there and then, and what's helped and what is more difficult, can be really useful. But as you say, stewards that can help you, and often being able to just give them a little bit of information beforehand, if you're signed in as steward, about what Maureen's preferred name is, what the sorts of things that are going to help her and the things that aren't going to help, that can be really useful. And Terry, I just, having listened to you, sorry, I came in there because I know we've got such to get through during this session, but do want to emphasize to people, you mentioned the Nimbus card.
Yeah.
And we will put a link in for that, because I think that's quite a key thing about and can be really useful for other carers. So we will, for the carers listening to this, put a link to that. It enables us
to go a lot more than we would be able to afford to go otherwise.
Yeah. Okay.
Basically, I go free, and as a carer.
Yeah, so we'll put the links in there for carers, and then just those other information. If I go back to that carer question who was really worried about the pre-show and the after show, I think your thoughts there are really useful. What time does the auditorium open? Can we get seated early? And you're right, auditoriums empty really quickly, don't they? So if you can hang on, if she, I suppose the difficulty there, do you ever have, Terry, the difficulty that because she sees everyone else get up to leave, that prompts Maureen and she wants to get up to leave?
She does, yes, but she'll sit there if I don't move. Depends where you sat, to be honest, because sometimes you just got to get up because you're at the end of the road, like last night. I wanted to come out, you know, but it wasn't too bad actually. It's a theatre we do, so it was fun.
So you've mentioned last night. You went out to some music last night, didn't you?
Yeah, I did that, yes.
And we Grace mentioned at the beginning around this set of 5 sessions has looked at brain wiring, the emotions and the communication and the expression that it can give to someone. Are you able to, and the soundtrack of life, are you able to share with us anything from last night?
Yeah, well, yes, it was a Simon and Garfunkel tribute called the Simon and Garfunkel Story, and it was excellent. The 2 lads that did it, and it was amazing. What I found good was the fact that Maureen was, well, in fact, I had Maureen one side and another one on the other side of me singing along, which I don't normally have, but it was good because I can't, it's not, Simon and Garfunkel is not something that we never did play a lot at home. We have played it, because, and Maureen was singing along and she seemed to know the words, and I don't know how she knew the words, but this is a situation I find right the way through. I mean, should we go down to my daughter's and she puts Spotify on and the beat was playing and the ABBA playing and that, and it's amazing that she can sing along to it and she knows all the words, and it's not something we would normally play because our love is country music and folk music. So. But you know, she obviously comes from somewhere in her brain.
Yeah, and that's the wiring of the brain, isn't it?
Yeah.
Grace, I don't know if you've got any comments on there, because Terry is saying it isn't necessarily the music he would have expected her to know all the words to, but somewhere there in that wiring it's present.
Yeah.
Absolutely, and I think that what happens is sometimes there's a song and lyrics just stick for whatever reason, and often it's quite an emotional reason, and you know, it might be a song that was something that mattered when to Maureen when she was a bit younger, and then it's just stayed with her. And there are lyrics, like yesterday I was with some nieces and nephews and they were singing songs, and I thought, I don't think I know the words to this, and all it took was 2 words that they started singing, and I was like, oh yeah, I do know the words. And it's so funny, and I had that kind of experience of, you know, oh, they're coming back, something's being triggered, and it was because we were having a family experience. So I think, you know, there might have been moments when those songs really mattered to Maureen for whatever reason, and then they're just there, and it is extraordinary how the brain can have that capacity to recall those.
No, inhibitions tend to go as well when she's singing. I mean, we went to a show a few months ago. He's a folk singer, Seth Lake, who plays the violin and fiddle, and Maureen goes to the loo, as I say, it's quite often, unfortunately. Normally I go with her, and to make sure she can get back. Anyway, we came to basically the last song, and Seth Lake was on stage fiddling away, and all of a sudden, Maureen darted out of her seat, dancing down the steps. The whole auditorium was in uproar, just laughing. Seth Lake nearly stopped playing because it was so fun, and she darted out of the door. Obviously, I knew she was going to the loo. Normally, I wouldn't let her go on her own. I was worried the whole time. Anyway, she couldn't find her way back. I don't know how she got back, but she came up from the top of the auditorium down at the end of it, but she found it. But it was just her inhibitions just disappeared, and she was singing away, and you know, and it was lovely, absolutely lovely.
You know, Terry, that reminds me again, Grace, do you remember Lucy talking the other week about, or it was only last week, wasn't it, I think, about when she's helping her mum to dress in the morning, and how it's the real sort of motivating music that really helps them through that. What I'd like to know, Terry, is, you know, we've talked over the weeks about how music can really help the well-being of the person with dementia. It can help the well-being of a family carer and also the relationship between the two. But for you, are you able to articulate what it does for you when you see Maureen connecting with that music?
Yeah, well, yeah, I just smile and I love it. You know, it's because, I mean, she is a happy person. I mean, I'm lucky in the fact that her dementia she's clicked on the right side, if you like, in the fact that she's always happy. Everything is fine. She doesn't realise what she's like. But when she's singing and dancing, I mean, we used to spend a lot of time in Spain. We don't now so much, but most nights we were out at a music gig, and a lot of our friends down there. And we go out and she'd be dancing 3-4 hours, I mean, I did as well till I did many years, but it was good. But that's what she enjoys doing. And she goes to a couple of dementia clubs here now, which I found. One with Age UK and one with actually the local NHS. And I don't know what she does there, to be honest, because she never remember what she's done. But when I do talk to the people there, the area that they think she enjoys most is when they do a bit of dancing and singing. And so it's great. So it's obviously, it's not just with me, it's with everybody.
Thank you, Terry. And I know we're online, but it's certainly palpable to me when you talk about her reaction to music. And also not just her reaction to music, but actually how it rekindles, as you say, that days gone past of things that you used to do together, going to Spain, and that relationship you had dancing at, on holidays and things like that. You just see you light up. And so I'm sure it is massively important for your own well-being and your own resilience as well. It does, just to mention, I know somebody here has said that, and Cass made a really important point, and again, Grace, Terry, any comments on this? She said that listening to music can bring so much joy to her husband as it does to Maureen, but she's learned when not to use music, that sometimes it can have a bit of an adverse effect. Have you got any thoughts on that, either of you?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in here, but Terry, I think your experience will be much more valuable. One of the things that I have always talked about is it's about the right music at the right time in the right way with the right person. So Terry's described beautifully about what music means to him and Maureen and how they make it happen together. But there's something about being with and not doing too when it comes to music. And maybe that's sort of the music therapist in me who, when we make music with other people, we do it because we're entering into an experience, a conversation, a relationship, whatever it might be, but you do that knowing that you're both happy to do it. And so I would never want anyone to feel that they're being forced or coerced into having a musical experience, because actually music is so tied into who we are as people that, we don't like things being done to us. So why would we like music being played to us if we're not happy or feeling receptive to it? And so there's an emotional component to it and an autonomy, self-agency, control element to it. But there's also a dementia element to it, which is that, and we've talked about this in previous sessions, that a relationship with music isn't a static thing. It's really dynamic, changes over time. The music that you love today might be the music you love in 10 years, but it might not be. But equally, that's the same with dementia. How your dementia is today might not be how it is tomorrow or in 2 weeks' time or even a month's time. So it's really important to be mindful of that, and also add into that the complexity of whatever type of dementia it is will have an impact on how somebody experiences music, plus any additional kind of hearing impairment. So when we think about music, absolutely, I want to feel all the things that Terry is making me feel when he talks about him and Maureen experiencing the joy of music together. But Terry talks about doing that in a really thoughtful, curated, meaningful, personalized way. And I think that's the big message, is how do you make it right for somebody to have those moments that mean so much to somebody with music?
Yeah, because I do notice, sometimes I'll put music on, put Spotify on, and we'll listen to music and see from Maureen's reaction, and she says, can we have it quiet? Just turn off. What I tend to do, we've got a little office here, which I do a bit of exercise and things. I listen to my folk music and it's out of the way for me. And she can listen if she wants to. But I'm aware that she doesn't want to listen to music all the time, but when she does, it's great.
Great, thank you. And I think that is very much the personalised approach, isn't it? And we're going to move on to the personalised approach in a second. But just to reiterate, I think what both of you said, that not all of us want music playing all of the time, do we? And somebody with dementia has a brain that's changing. And that brain that's changing is having to work very hard in the moment. And sometimes the chemical changes in the brain mean that somebody can really access lots of things really well, and other times they can't. Sometimes some good days, some good hours and so on. But if you're having to really concentrate to be able to do some of the focus of a task, sometimes music can just be that one extra thing that topples the balance for somebody. And I think that's why in care settings, we say very carefully, choose your moments for music, choose the music, who is the music on for and what's the purpose of it. Just having music playing in the background all of the time does not make it personalised at all. And doesn't always have a good impact for people. You know, Terry, you've said Maureen will say, turn it off, I don't want that right now. And the great thing is she has the communication ability to do that. But if you don't, then somebody around you has to be able to help out with that personalised care plan and that personalised support, which brings us on to that topic. We are running out of time, actually, but I know we do want to just cover this, don't we, Grace, around personalisation that Terry so beautifully explained.
Absolutely, and I think that when we've talked about personalisation in the last few weeks, I think what's very much tied up in that, and I hope that people have felt this, is it's really about who the person is. And when we're talking about the person, I hope that what's come across is identity, culture, community, everything that it means to be human. And so we're not talking about imposing music on people that doesn't resonate with them, that doesn't have any cultural relevance or a sort of inroad to who they are as a being. It's really, really important that when we think about personalization, we're thinking about the whole person, every element and aspect of their lives. And it really reminded me, we were chatting a couple of weeks ago about finding where you can. I know that sometimes services are really limited, but finding services that really do speak to who you are. And those services are certainly on the up. And there's one that I think does really admirable work called Touchstone BME Dementia Service. I think they're up in Leeds. But what they do is really appreciate what music means in those cultures and implements that in how they run their dementia cafes and things like that. So, you know, if music means a certain thing to you, try and find spaces and places and groups and people that connect you with music in the way that you want to be connected. And as ever, dementia carers, Cal and myself, we're really, really happy to help you find those things. If you're struggling to find them, we will help you to find those. But I think when we talk about personalization, we very much mean identity, culture, inclusion, belonging, all those things that we know that music is so valuable for doing when you're feeling excluded because there's a diagnosis and people might not understand what it means to live with dementia.
Or you're excluded because the person you care for has a diagnosis of dementia,
exactly.
and you're excluded as a carer as well. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm aware that we really are racing towards the end, so I do have a few things to flag, but I also really want to give Terry the chance to have some final words as well. So just to say to people, you know, we have created a playlist as a result of these 5 weeks of sessions where people have been nominating songs, and over the weekend, in line with Thank You Day, we curated that. I know there's a link to it on the Facebook, but I'm sure we can put a link to it in the chat as well. So if you want to see the playlist that carers who've been to these sessions have created, then do so. But it might not be for you. It might not be the kind of playlist that you need for all of the reasons that Grace has just said. So it does bring us to the end of today's session. And Grace, as always, thank you for joining us. But Terry, particularly, thank you for joining us and giving us just a tiny insight to your thoughts and your personal experiences. Grace and I will always pick up questions after these if people have them, and as Grace said, Dementia Carers Account will support people with finding ways that to use music that suits their background. And Terry, I'm hoping that, you know, if possible, if we need to draw on your vast experience,
no problem.
Thank you. We can. I've thrown that one on you all last minute tonight. Then we will do so. So before we finish and before I do the final flags for other things that we're going to be doing in the future, Terry, have you got any final thoughts on music and the role of music?
I think something that Grace said, which I think is important, is to, if you do like music and you do like concerts, etc., approach the individual theatre. Most of them have some sort of access, either card or seats or whatever, and they're always happy to help. So I've never come across a venue that has got really, hold on themselves to actually help in getting me into the theatre or whatever.
Thank you. And as you say, explore the stewardship, because it can't be easy as a male carer standing outside the female toilets.
No, it's not. I spent half my life standing outside women's toilets, which is
So hopefully, and just to say, Terry, also Terry, Alan has messaged in as well to say some really important points, and Terry, great advice and great thoughts. So I'm so pleased that we invited you to this session today. Grace, anything from you?
A huge thank you to Dementia Care Accounts for inviting me to be part of this. And I think that there's so many, but I'd say just keep that personalization message in mind. What works today might not work tomorrow, but that doesn't mean that music doesn't work. It just means it might not be the right moment, or it might not be the right piece of music or song. So, and don't feel you have to do it all today, just little bits, and work out what the music needs, what you need the music to do for you, and it can do it. But as I said, Dementia Carers are here, and so am I. So please just send us your questions or any thoughts after tonight, and in the future we'd be very happy to help.
Great, thank you. And so this is the last of the 5 sessions on Music Mondays, but we will be inviting Grace back, because our next campaign is going to be, and Terry, our next campaign is going to be Walk in My Shoes, which is giving people the opportunity to walk and think about what it's like to be a carer, and consider perhaps small ways in which people in the community can support a family carer with things that, and it might be stewardship, it might be something like that at a local theatre or something. So we'll be talking about walking in my shoes and the importance of music, I am sure, when we get into that campaign. And the other link that we will put into this chat is to our Dementia Carers Count 2023 Family Carers Survey. That's live at the moment. We really value any information you can give us in that. It doesn't take too long to fill in, but you can give it as much information as you like, and it will be really helpful for us to inform services as we move forward through 2023 and beyond. So thank you very much. If we haven't got to your questions, then we'll take a look afterwards. If we have missed them, I'm really sorry, but this session has just whizzed by. And so I'm going to say goodbye. Grace?
Thank you so much for having me, and thanks everybody for joining us over these last 5 weeks.
Yeah, and Terry?
Thank you for inviting me to do it. It's been enjoyable.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks everyone.
Okay, bye.